In 1992, video games were evolving from 8-bit graphic sprites to 16-bit graphics. Competing for the top spot at the time were the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Both consoles had successful titles. On the Super NES, there were Super Mario World, A Link to the Past, Star Fox, Super Mario Kart, Kirby Superstar, Donkey Kong Country, Chrono Trigger, and so on. As for the Sega Genesis, successful titles include games such as Altered Beast, Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic Spinball, Streets of Rage Trilogy, Phantasy Star, X-Men, X-Men 2, Clone Wars, and so many more. But both consoles had their share of rare gems that were successful, but never got the chance to have a series. Some rare gems, however, were disliked, yet still remain cult classics among its followers. The game we shall focus on today is a rare gem of Sega Genesis console. That game is Chakan, the Forever Man, a video game based on a comic book of the same name by Robert A. Kraus and developed by Sega of America's Annunziata. This cult classic is known to be one of the hardest games ever created by Sega of America. This is a game that challenged a gamer's skills, infuriated them, broke their controllers, and left them partially insane. Though this game had potential, it was criticized for its very harsh difficulty. This is a game that was uncommon for its time due to its dark and gritty atmosphere, especially since games were usually family friendly at the time. This is the cult following of Chakan, the Forever Man. Chakan the Forever Man is a comic book series released in the late 1980s by Robert A. Kraus. Chakan has been hunting supernatural evils long before Dante Sparta and the Penitent One ever existed. The story of Chakan in both the game and the comic book tells about a great warrior and sorcerer who was unbeatable in combat. Neither man nor beast could best him in Mortal Kombat, until one day in his own arrogance, he declared that Death himself would bow before his blades. Death appeared and smiled, saying, "A wager. If you win, eternal life is yours, but if I win, your soul is mine to do with as I wish for all of eternity." Foolishly, he accepted the deal. They fought with sword and sorcery, and the earth trembled at their clash. Chakan struck him so hard that Death found himself at his mercy. Chakan was rewarded, but with a fatal twist. He is cursed to live eternally with Death's visage and never know peace. In order to seek solitude and rest in peace, he must destroy all supernatural evils of the world. A game developer from Sega of America, Annunziata, met the creator of the comic book series at a convention and was very impressed with the designs and how the game captured the dark and gritty atmosphere of the series. The game was released in 1992 on the Sega Genesis, and upon release, it was met with mixed to negative reviews due to its unforgiving difficulty. However, many fans of this rare gem considered it a cult classic. Some players beat the game after days, weeks, or months after its release. However, there are some who gave up and years later decided to play the game again, but once they beat the game, a new memory stuck with them for the rest of their lives. Players start as Chakan in a central hub stage in which they can choose 4 elemental stages of water, earth, fire, and air. However, every stage has an hourglass in which time runs out, they return to the central hub. When players are killed, they return to the central hub as well. The thing is that there is no game over, because Chakan is immortal, but just because Chakan cannot die doesn't mean he cannot feel any pain or be harmed, for his immortality is a curse. Players can equip a variety of 4 special weapons: the mallet, the scythe, the grappling hook, and the axe. The mallet is used to break walls down. Grappling hook is used for grappling onto hooks. The axe is used to splinter through beasts, and the scythe is to slash through enemies and tear spider webs. The main weapon, of Chakan the Forever Man is his swords. Players can also infuse Chakan's blades with elemental magic such as fire, thunder, and ice. But these magical files must be found scattered in different stages in order for the magic to work. With Chakan's sword equipped or the grappling hook, players can attack enemies in many different directions and also double jump and roll as well, which they can go faster. Players can also deflect some projectiles with their swords. Also, when using magic, players can heal, become invincible, and invisible as well, which is a useful tip on bosses. Other magical powers included a higher jump and a reset magic as well. The reset magic is very risky to use because once it's cast, the time will remind and return to the central hub, thus wasting Chakan's ability to heal and use practical powers later on. Chakan the Forever Man is comprised of 24 excruciating levels. Players begin at a central hub stage starting in the terrestrial plane of evil. The 4 gates to the stages represent the elements of water, earth, fire, and air. The stages of the terrestrial plane are Elkenrod's lair, the Spider Queen's lair, the lair of the Mantis, and the Dragonfly King's lair. After completing the first 12 levels on the terrestrial plane, players proceed to the elemental plane of evil, which is 40% harder than the terrestrial plane. Despite the harsh difficulty of the game, players must admit that the game's designs perfectly captured the dark, morbid, and gritty world of the comic books by Robert A. Kraus. The stages of the terrestrial plane were done very well, especially those of Mantis' lair and the Spider Queen's lair. The elemental plane stages also had very well designed stages, but still, this game was no pushover whatsoever. Despite the mixed to negative reviews the game received, Chakan had a Sega Game Gear port, but unfortunately it was not praised as much either. However, plans were in place for a sequel. It was developed by Annunziata Studio and now, but no new information about the project has been released since 2001, over 20 years ago. It was planned to be released for as many current platforms as possible, according to Ed Annunziata himself in an interview during May 2001. There was an early concept for the art for the new game of Chakan the Forever Man. It was to be ported to the Sega Dreamcast and had new gameplay features such as running and blocking. Unfortunately, when the Dreamcast went under in 2001, so did Chakan's chance to make a comeback. Some of the early concepts of the cancelled sequel will go to Blood Omen 2 as claimed by Legacy of Kain fans, although this is unconfirmed and the only concrete link between the games is the presence of director Steve Ross. Ross and colleague John Miller both publicly attributed the similarities to a common look of Ross's work than any intentional reuse. After completing the elemental plane of evil, Chakan believes that his task of destroying all supernatural evil is completed. He stabs himself with his blade, believing that it's all over, that he can finally rest. And as the credits roll, Death cackles at Chakan and tells him that in the stars, there are planets that have supernatural evils. As long as those evils exist, he will never rest. Chakan screams in fury, not all evil has been destroyed, and this puts gamers to fight against a powerful boss. If players are defeated, Chakan appears and tells Reed, "Rest will come another day." But if they manage to beat the game, this was the biggest insult to injury. The best ending was not completed because the developers did not count on people being able to beat this game. Talk about smacking around one's ego. After beating that final boss, after enduring such torment, an hourglass is displayed on the screen. No text, no awesome visuals, nothing. But after 15 minutes, not the end is displayed on the screen. This type of ending is one of the sickest jokes to play on a gamer ever. Despite the harsh difficulty of the game, it still has its good points. For example, the music of the game was pretty well made in the Dragonfly King stage, but some of the music was not as catchy. Many believe that the grappling hook was the most useful of all the 4 special weapons. The hammer was a pretty strong weapon as well, and the axe was often used on bosses too. Also, the stages were done perfectly, but still, the difficulty is what makes this game unique in its own aspect, whether good or bad. And finally, to wrap up this episode, there are various rare gems of the 1990s in terms of games. Some of them had potential that lived up quite to it. Others had their potentials wasted and unfulfilled. Some were a huge success that deserve a sequel or a revival. Others do not deserve such, like Pit Fighter, for example, which is a Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat clone that was very, very, very cheap. Don't miss the next episode of Video Games in the World Season 1 Reboot. Only 4 episodes left for this reboot. Thanks for watching. This is John of Video Games and the World, signing off. Don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, and please do support me on Patreon.